I really like a slow cut. Have you noticed that with people that you've worked with, that some people respond really well with aggressive, shorter timelines and some people don't?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always responders and non-responders and everything. I think if you really dug down to it, if you think about what that energy balance equation is, right? Like calories in is pretty straightforward. Like you said, just the food that you put in, and you can reduce that just by, like you said, taking out the brown sugar or whatever. But if you look at the
Mm,
calories out, it gets more complicated, right? Like you've got your basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of energy we need to stay alive. You've got the energy to digest the food, and then the different macronutrients take different types or amounts of energy to digest that food. You've got your non-exercise, which is all the fiddling around and making coffee and going to the toilet that we do, and our steps every single day. And then you've got your activity. So there's a lot of variance within that, and you'll generally find people you can explain how well people respond based on those factors in their calorie out, right? Like generally if they've got a much higher protein diet and they're burning more calories by using more energy, absorbing that food, they can generally handle it a bit better. Whereas if you take someone who's got a really high fat or really high carb diet and that's not the case, that generally helps with being able to handle it. If you've got guys that have active lifestyles, not just training, but they're up and they're walking, they're doing things to sway that energy balance in their favor, they can generally handle it a bit better. Or I guess the big one is the activity, right? It's very different if you've got someone doing a 30-minute workout every single day, which is great, it's absolutely fine. But then if you've got someone like Alex who's training 5 to 6 hours a day, it's going to dip them in such a big deficit, and your body's going to feel that. Not only are they going to feel that, like I said, you've got to recover from that. And that's the big thing is the recovery. When we talk about top level fighters and getting them to a fight, it's not necessarily about who trained the hardest, it's who recovered the best during their fight camp. And this calorie deficit and how aggressive you're in it is such a huge component because that energy out part of that energy balance equation is so high. So they could probably get away with eating a bit more and eating more calories than the average Joe does to lose weight, but they're still in a really big deficit, and managing that deficit, like you said, just putting them in the lowest one possible gets them to the fight in the best shape possible.
mm. So coming back to the food choices and the calories and macros you put them in, um, yeah, what was the thinking with it? Was it higher fiber? Was it lower fiber? Were you trying to take out sodium? Were you trying to keep sodium in? I'm not sure at what point these meals were that he was having. Was it closer to the fight? Was it a bit further away? Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. So as I was saying, yeah, we have that fat loss phase, and then we switch into what we call like our fight week or weight cutting phase. And the weight cutting is removing fluid in different parts of the body. And you can do that by manipulating intake. And like you just alluded to, there's certain macronutrients and food choices that hold on or cause fluid to be held in the body. So carbohydrates, if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and you're not doing a lot of high intensity activity that's going to burn it, your body will store it away because it's good energy. It's really good energy. So it'll store it as this thing called glycogen, and we'll put glycogen in our muscles and we'll put glycogen in our liver, but glycogen holds water with it. So if you've got a lot of glycogen or you're topped up with your glycogen stores, you're going to have a lot of water. If you take away the carbohydrate from the diet or you do a lot of high intensity activity without that carbohydrate, your body will start burning into those stores because it wants to use it as energy. This is why you see people who use ketogenic diets or go on a high fat, low carb diet, why they get that initial weight loss so fast and they go, this is great, this is so amazing. It's because they're ripping out all these glycogen stores, which not only takes out the physical glycogen, but then all the water. And for every 1 gram of glycogen, there's 2 to 3 grams of water with it. So you can imagine if you've got 500 grams of glycogen in your body, that's a couple kilos you're just ripping off by simply removing the carbohydrate. You can see why people get so stoked with keto, but then
And
it
then I
doesn't
get stuck
last.
in the trap.
Yeah, yeah, but then obviously it doesn't last because you've got to be in that deficit to actually lose the body fat. And then to manipulate water, we can also take out salt or sodium or lower it because, again, sodium is what we call osmotically active, which just means it draws water, it holds on to water. So it makes sense. The more sodium you have in your body, the more water. Like I said, if you go to an Asian or restaurant that's very salty, lots of salty food, you'll wake up holding more water and be heavier. So we take that out. get more free loss of water. Like I said, your gut will have a lot of food in it at any one point, and the biggest contributor to that is how much fiber you have, which is a great thing. Everyday life, you eat more fiber, you slow that transit. It's more food, more time for your good gut bacteria to eat it. It's amazing. You should have lots of fiber in your diet, but we can manipulate that in 3 to 4 days and take out all the fiber and then clear that empty space. That's 1 to 2 kilos that you could be holding. And Alex holds about that in his gut. And then the last thing we play around with is the actual water intake. So like you said, if you drink your smoothie of 1.5 liter in the morning, you're going to put 1.5 liters back on. So, and then you're also going to put that fluid back in other parts of your body. So what we can do is we can manipulate your intake, where we can either put a lot of intake in and do something like we call water loading, which causes a lot more fluid to go through our kidneys. And what that does is it causes changes in our kidneys, and our kidneys think, oh, there's lots of water here, I've got to get rid of it because I don't want to upset this balance of water in our body too much. So it pushes out a lot more water. And then what we can do is reduce that. And then hopefully our kidneys keep pushing out that water, but then we've reduced our total intake maybe 12 hours before we actually step on the scale, and we continue pushing out that water, even though we've stopped our intake, and we can get a bit more. So what you're essentially doing for those 5 days or so is just dehydrating the body. But you're dehydrating the body, and then the last thing we'll do with Alex is we'll either put him in a hot bath, a warm bath, or a sauna, and then sweat and get more fluid loss. So it's a game of slowly dehydrating the body and then rapidly dehydrating the body.
When I first thought of doing a podcast in 2019, I wrote down everything that I wanted to achieve with the show. And one thing I never wrote down was to spam you with ads of products that I never really used myself. However, I did write down that I wanted to grow it as big as possible and have as many interesting people on the show as I could. To help make that happen, all I ask is that you leave a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to this episode on and share it with someone that you know it will benefit. If you want to support myself even further, and more importantly, your body transformation, and are interested in having me as your coach to help you achieve the results that you just can't seem to achieve on your own, you can visit teamrockashby.com to see what program fits you best.